I'm Karen Gibbs, and you are in the group Karen Gibbs for the Love of Batiks. I'm the creative director for Banyan Batiks by Northcott, and I get to play in batiks every single day. And I kind of wanted to bring my world to you and let you know the different parts of making the batik, and that's what this group's about. But it's also about showcasing your projects or showcasing what you love about batiks, or maybe you just saw a batik wall in a quilt shop that was just fantastic, and you want to do a scan, take a photo, a video of it, and show it in this group. Please do that. Shout out to your favorite local quilt shops, and I want to see what they're doing with batiks. I want to see what kind of projects you have going with batiks. Make sure if you're taking a photo in a quilt shop, you do ask though, okay? Or if you're taking a photo of somebody else's project, you do ask. Today we're talking a little bit about the chops, okay? How the chops are made. Just taking a little portion of that, because of course the chop is used to carry the wax to apply the wax to the fabric, but the actual making of a chop, it's an art in itself, okay? The Toucan chop maker, it's usually grandfathered in or passed down from generation to generation in families. There's groups of them. They are fantastic artisans. They'll take a black and white sketch, and that's what I send them, whether I create it on the computer or whether I create it by hand. And generally my sketches, I like to doodle, okay? I like to create it by hand. I used to long arm, and I think if you ever have done any quilting or free motion quilting, people say to you, oh, you have to just draw, right? Just continually draw, and then you get it without picking up your pencil. So this is kind of like that, except for I can pick up my pencil, okay, and have different motifs, which is kind of nice. The thing is, with the chop, when the chop is being made, it's made out of copper, okay, and it's made, we've got a few of them here. It's made and it's put on like a grid. You can see on the back, okay, there's a grid, and there's a handle here, and there's some batik on the handle, and then there's kind of like a wax paper kind of thing here, and this protects, this kind of paper here protects the worker when he's dipping it in the hot wax and applying it then to the fabric, so it's not splashing up at him or something like that. All right, but you can see how there's a grid, or if I pull it back, you can see the grid behind the copper. All right, so they take my drawing and they draw a grid on my drawing, right? So then if I have a certain amount of dots in this space, then they put the copper in there, okay? And it's thin pieces of copper. Now it has to be the same width, right? So that you can see here, it's the same width right there. All the little teeny pieces of copper do not stick out. It's the same width, okay? So I can rub my hand on there. I'm not scraping anything. So then one, when they go to put it down, one isn't holding more wax than another, for instance, okay? Now when they're creating this, like right here, in here, you can see the thin lines of copper. It starts with a piece, and they have to mold it to that, to the drawing, all right? And they got to think about the thickness of the line here, right? So maybe it's got to be 2 pieces of copper in there. Or to fill in here, it's quite a few pieces of copper. Why isn't a solid piece of copper? They're working with strips of copper. Everything is created from the strips of copper. And this is filled in. When you go to see it on fabric, you'll see that it's totally filled in. And let me show you what I mean. Here, I'll show you on this one. It's totally filled in there, right? Okay, because the chop is dipped in wax, okay, and the wax is liquid, and so then when the liquid's on the fabric, it's totally filled in. But it's all strips of copper, whether it be a dot, whether it be a large dot, whether it be kind of a circle kind of thing. All right, or a line, or you can see on this one the daisies, the different petals right in here. If I've drawn little indentations, they follow that. And again, you can see the grid on the back, right? So they draw out some sort of grid, whether it be just so they have reference to make sure that they they put the copper in the right places. All right. Now, if you look at this one too, compared to this one, there's quite a difference here, isn't there? All right. Can you see the difference? Now we have someone who's just learning how to be a toucan chop artisan and someone who's experienced. So when I'm looking at how things are being created, I want to make sure that I have for our batiks, I want to make sure that they're using the people who have the experience. But this right here, see how it's kind of rough, right? And it's in its shape. So my drawing, and this has been injured a little bit too, and that's one reason I have this one. It's been injured in my suitcase, okay? But you can see right here, the little tiny pieces of copper, okay? They're not really, they don't flow really well, right? They don't make that flower really nice and smooth, or the leaves nice and smooth the way I would have had it drawn, all right? So this is something, this is more of a beginner chop maker. He's learning how to do it. Notice the grid again in the back. It is nice and smooth, okay? So they have a certain width, but you can see it's a little bit rougher, right? And ignore the bending parts right there. But again, right in here, it's filled in, all right, for a thicker line. He chose to fill it in this way, right, as opposed to putting two pieces of copper next to each other, which I think would have been better to form the thicker line here in what I wanted with the branches. All right, now notice you can see on these two, they're two different sizes, right? Okay, they usually don't go much bigger than this size here because when they dip it into the wax, the pan of wax is a certain size. So generally it's 20 centimeters square. Obviously this has a little bump out and this has a little bump out. And why would that be? That would be because this is going to come in here for the repeat. So we got to think about the repeat too, right? And that's why it's very important for them to put it on the grid so that it does repeat correctly. You can see, let me see if I can find one that has a little, on the corners usually, and I don't know if we bent them out, but on the corners right in here, they have little, almost like little points or little teeny, almost like little teeny nails. But this is a way for them to line it up. So when they put it down, they can then dip in the wax and put it down again and line up the little corners of each chop when they go to apply it. So sometimes it's a little dot of wax, and in quality control, they flick that little piece of wax off. But that's a way to line it up to make it extremely accurate. Okay, so the creating of each one of these chops takes about 20 days. And I think we showed you the video of a couple of them being made. And one of them was from the BFF Essentials that are delivering for Banyan Batiks, that are delivering to your stores coming in August. And you can see all the different lines, right? All the different values that I put in there. And it holds, let me see, here's a good one so you can see the contrast. You can see we've got different kinds of widths, right? So how did I create that? That was filling in space with the copper, with little teeny pieces of copper. And then here, maybe it's one strip of copper, all right? So the repeat is very important, but also maintaining the integrity of the design. Now I can come up with tons of different designs, right? Here's some more colorations of BFFs, all right? But I want to make sure that it works in a lot of different colorations, okay? Maybe I want to play with the design in the motif. I want the colors to be all different colors in the motif, like this one, and then maybe just a couple different ones in that, in the background. This is the one that was, I think, created in the video. Okay, see how it's got kind of a peachy background, a little bit of light green, but I wanted a lot of different areas to hold the wax because I'm choosing 3 to 4, maybe 5, 6 different colors for the motif. So I want to make sure that we have that filled in space, okay? And then maybe on this one, less coloration in the motif, but more in the background showing through. So I needed to make sure that I had enough space behind the motif as well, right? The negative space in a design or in a batik. All right, let's look at this one. This one here you've seen before. This one, daisy chain. There's a lot more negative space there, isn't there, than say the BFF. Okay, so I'm playing the same thing that you normally see in cotton fabrics, playing with something that's a little bit more busy, right? It's got some great texture to it. Whereas this one has the negative space. And then, so I'm going to play with more color, or maybe color differentiation in the background versus in the motif. I've got filled in areas here, and then I've got the line drawing kind of thing there, so the background will peek through. So you gotta think about that. You gotta think about the repeat. But each one of these chops, like I said, is a work of art. I value it. And it's got the handle on it. It's quite heavy. It's made out of copper. We've had some questions before about what happens to the chop once we're done using it. And they will use it in the domestic market. And like I said, I've seen sometimes my design on sarongs or something walking around the beach in Bali. But also we will reuse the copper. And the copper is moldable, right? If you've ever used anything like copper tubing and hammered it or something like that. I actually had a friend of one of my kids do a project for their final project in high school. And they tried to create a chop out of copper piping, right? And found out how difficult it was. So there's a challenge for you, something interesting. Take some copper tubing, cut it up, try and make sure it's the same width, right? So you don't scrape your hand, and see what kind of circular designs you can make. But the copper transports the wax really well onto the fabric. So that's how a chop is made. And we put some video on there. When I was in Indonesia, I filmed one of the gentlemen making the chop. They're very, very patient. It takes a long time. It's not something that is made by machine. It is hand done, hand molded. Each little piece of copper is hammered out to fit into mold into the design I'm creating. So I just wanted to let you know, this is Karen Gibbs for the Love of Batiks. And I want you to get going on your challenges for your Batik challenge, and we'll have another piece of it, maybe the launch of our making our projects next week. Thank you.